All right, happy Thursday, y'all. Welcome back. Today we're going to be previewing the Gamecocks opponent for this weekend, Mizzou. Jack, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Karenna. Thank you for doing this. It is always good to talk with you about South Carolina's opponent every week, and this one's no different. Look, the Gamecocks haven't beaten Missouri since 2018. It's been quite a while since. I mean, where were you in 2018? Were you in what, high school or?
In 2018, I actually was in eighth grade. I was not even in high school
Wow.
yet.
Well, it puts into perspective
No.
just how long it's been. So I was in high school when, or maybe even freshman in college when they last beat Missouri. But the point is, it's been a while, so I know the Gamecocks are definitely looking to get the monkey off their back.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. All right, so we were talking a little bit beforehand about how we're feeling confused, maybe doubtful about Brady Cook coming back. Maybe it'll be Drew Pine. How do you think the Gamecocks need to respond to either or?
Yeah, I think they're just doing what they've normally been doing, which is preparing for both quarterbacks. It hasn't been the first time this year that they've had a situation like this where we don't know if who's going to start, we don't know who's going to play. I think it's a little bit more clear in this case where I think Drew Pine's probably the starter this week, but it reminds me of the Texas A&M game a few weeks ago when South Carolina won that game 44-20, but the thing was, no one really had a clue. Well, I think most people assumed Marcel Reed would start that game, but there was always that thought, like, hey, maybe Connor Wegman ends up starting this game and plays, but that ended up not being the case. It ended up being Reed the entire game. So I think we're in a similar situation here where Pine's probably starting this game, especially considering, like you said, Brady Cook's been listed as doubtful for this game on the SEC availability report, and Pine was the starter last week, and I mean, the numbers look fine, but you got to keep in mind this was ultimately a 30-23 win over Oklahoma for Missouri. This was a game that was not really much of the shootout that it kind of ended up being. I mean, Pine threw 3 touchdowns in that game, but it was a lot of one of the star receivers for Missouri having a game, and obviously Missouri's defense won the game on a fumble return touchdown. So I don't expect whoever's at quarterback, I don't expect much of an for South Carolina. I think no time can get into the backfield and create trouble. It's more so Missouri's got some playmakers out in space like Luther Burden and Weiss, like I mentioned, and Noel. How stop those guys?
Do you feel like Drew Pine's been contributing to the rushing game? Because I have not. I didn't see him play last week. So, do you?
Yeah. So not really. I think it's more so Missouri's so good in the game last year, and part of that is their lead back coach Schrader, who is no longer at Missouri anymore. But they've got some guys, but overall, I think the way. Like I said, the way I think Missouri is going to try to beat is out zone, something that Shane Beamer pointed out straight up in his press conference earlier this week. And it's also about knowing that whoever's at quarterback, whatever they try to do, the main focal point of their offense is the 2 stud receivers that they have. Like I said before, Luther Burden and Theo Weiss Jr. They combine for a significant amount of targets, catches compared to anyone else on that roster. And I mean, their third best receiver, Mookie Cooper, who's got, I think, 12 catches this year. He's not, who knows if he's going to play in this game. He's listed as doubtful along with Cook. So that's another guy that's out probably from Missouri this weekend. We'll see if anything changes. But for right now, it definitely seems like they're going to try to rely a little bit on the rushing attack and then obviously the receivers. So we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm. How do you think South Carolina defense is going to impact this offense? Obviously, we talk about the defense every week. It's been great this season, but Missouri seems to have struggled a little bit. They struggled against high-quality defenses like Texas A&M and Alabama. How do you think they're going to respond to South Carolina?
Yeah, I mean, look, it is definitely true that they've struggled in some games this year. Like, yes, they're 7-2, but it doesn't really feel like Missouri is a 7-2 team. You know what I mean? Because they've kind of had games where it's like, Well, they beat Vanderbilt in double overtime. It took Oklahoma was leading in the final minutes of the game against Missouri last week out in Como, and it took a few slip-ups at the end to kind of prevail and get the win. But I think for this team, it's just they have struggled against common opponents. I mean, you mentioned it, Alabama, Texas A&M. Those are teams that South Carolina has played really well against. Like, I know they can't short against Alabama, but that was a game that South Carolina was leading going into the fourth quarter. And then with A&M, A&M dominated Missouri. It was like 41-10. And now with South Carolina, they beat the brakes off of them, winning 44-20. I think there's a lot of questions with this Missouri offense. Yes, they're winning games still somehow. But I think for South Carolina's defense, you've stepped up to any challenge that's been in their way this year. I really don't expect anything different.
How do we think probably Drew Pine is going to be able to respond to Kyle Kennard? We talked about him before. We talked about him last week, the week before. How do you think that offense needs to be responding to Kennard?
Yeah, look, Kennard is a monster. Shane Beamer said earlier in the week that he knew when he brought in Kennard from the transfer portal that he'd be good, but he didn't be good. See every game, even when he's not having the biggest stat number day, like he's not having 4 sacks, whatever the case might be, he's still making an impact. Like we saw it last week against Vanderbilt, where he had the strip sack fumble that gave South Carolina's offense the ball back after Lenore Sellers had fumbled, and then South Carolina goes down the field and scores a touchdown to take the lead for the first time in that Vanderbilt game. So Kennard is a threat to anything Missouri's going to try to do. And you also have to consider the fact that Missouri does give up some sacks. That is very evident. By the way, they've played against some of the better defenses like A&M and Oklahoma. It's not even just Kennard, though. That's the thing. Like, as we all well know with South Carolina, it's everyone getting in on the fun. It's Dylan Stewart coming off the other edge that will undoubtedly create issues for a Missouri offensive line that, look, to be honest, they haven't been splendid this year. They've had some issues against teams with great defensive fronts like Oklahoma and Texas A&M, giving up some sacks. So that is something to definitely keep an eye on in this game. But it's not even just Kennard, like I said. It's Stewart. It's the guys on the defensive tackles. You're getting DeAndre Jules probably back this week. It's the linebackers. It's everyone getting in on the action. And it's not just Kennard. It's everyone on that defense that Missouri's going to have to worry about.
All right, moving over to Mizzou's defense. Rocket Sanders looked insane last week. How do you think they need to focus on containing him?
Well, it's easier said than done, right? I think no one's been able to really slow Rocket down over the last few weeks. He's been a man on a mission this month. He's rushed for 270 yards over the last 2 games in November, and he's coming off a game where he had 3 touchdowns against Vanderbilt. And we know how Vanderbilt is a tough team. And look, Rocket is just I don't see him slowing down anytime soon. He's big. He's physical. He's strong. He makes the right cuts, the right moves. The offensive line is blocking for him, and so are the receivers on the perimeter and the tight ends. Everyone is doing their part in getting the offense going. But when they are running the football like they have been, especially with Rocket Sanders, it is very tough to slow him down. So I don't even know how to really answer that. Look, Missouri, I just don't see them being able to slow down Rocket. These other teams haven't been able to, and I know it's different, but something about Rocket in November is what Dow Loggins talked about earlier this week. Just he is built for these types of moments, these types of games, and he said it bluntly, if South Carolina is going to be having a chance to win this game, they need their star running back to show up. And so I definitely expect Rocket to definitely have another big game and help lead South Carolina to a potential win here.
Mm-hmm. Now, something we talked about it for, I think, Oklahoma and Vanderbilt, that we thought that the games would remain low scoring. Obviously, we were incorrect, but I'm going to ask you this regardless. Maybe this will be the week where this game is low scoring. What role do you think special teams or field position could play if the game does remain low scoring?
I'm going to go out on a limb and just say I think this game is not going to be low scoring. I think we have been wrong the last 2 times. I think we're going to finally get to a point where it's maybe these teams both score somewhere in like the 20s. I think South Carolina, just the way the offense has been clicking the last few weeks, I don't anticipate it really slowing down. So I think South Carolina is going to be fine offensively. And then defensively for the Gamecocks, they've been great at really keeping teams in check. And just with so many questions about the quarterback situation, with what that's going to look like for Missouri, it seems like it'll be Drew Pine, of course, for Missouri over Brady Cook right now, who's doubtful. But at the same time, there's also other weapons on that Missouri offense to stop. But I do expect South Carolina to be able to probably win this game. I mean, there's a reason why they're favored by 2 touchdowns. It's not some random thing. Now, to answer your question about what kind of role special teams and field position will play in this game, it's huge. You saw it play a big role in the A&M game and the Vanderbilt game where punting, Kai Kroger booming the ball back, pinning those teams back in their own territory. That played a huge part in those games. Special teams, I mean, it's massive, right? Field position, all those things. South Carolina struggled a little bit with the kicking game. Alex Herrera missed a 42-yard field goal against Vanderbilt last week. Didn't really matter, but he did have some good kicks against Texas A&M. So if this game is low scoring by chance and it does come down to like a field goal or something, I don't know if you feel great about South Carolina in that aspect, but I don't think this is going to be a game where South Carolina is needing a field goal to win the game. And if I'm wrong, well, I'm wrong. But I think for the most part, this is a game that South Carolina should be able to, if they do what they're supposed to do, they shouldn't have much trouble winning this game.
Mm-hmm. All right, question I got to ask every week. What does morale look like going into this game? Obviously, we talked about it. South Carolina hasn't beat Missouri in a while, so that's kind of rough. But also, they're at home, and their home environment is great. It's incredible.
Yeah, I mean, look, they've played great football lately. I just fully expect them to keep doing so. And kind of going back to my last answer on the most recent question you asked there, Karenna, I just think they got to just continue to do what they've been doing. They've been playing such great complementary football ever since they came out of the bye week. Like, their offense is clicking at the right time. They aren't giving up a truckload of sacks. They haven't given up a sack since the Oklahoma game. So knock on wood, you hope that keeps going. It just, the defense, time in and time out, even when the offense struggled early in the year, you knew the defense was going to give you a great chance to win the ball game. And look, they're being talked about as one of the best defenses in the country. So as long as they keep playing like it, you should feel good about your chances. And you don't have to go out here and score a bajillion points to beat Missouri. You just have to do enough offensively and play well enough in all 3 phases to win. Look, I know people are worried about the fact that South Carolina hasn't won in this game in such a long time, but allow me to give some sort of reassurance that things might be different this time around. Look back at the 3 losses that South Carolina has had in the Beamer era against Missouri. Some of the things they didn't have in those games: a good running attack. They didn't rush for 100 yards in any of those games. They didn't have much pressure on the quarterback. I think they only have had 2 sacks in the last 3 games against Missouri quarterbacks. So that's an issue in those games. And then also they hadn't been physical enough. So now you're fast forwarding to this year. South Carolina seemingly has all 3 of those things. They have a Rocket Sanders who can run the football effectively. It's not even just him. Lenore Sellers can run the ball well. Oscar Attaway's been good. Juju McDowell. They create so much pressure on quarterbacks that it's getting to a point where it's like, okay, where does it end? Because this defense is a nightmare for any opposing offense. So you have that going for you. And then also, I go back to 2 weeks ago when Beamer was talking about how he challenged the defense and just everyone in general for South Carolina to out-physical Texas A&M. And they certainly did that. I mean, that is a big part of why this team has been playing so well as it has. They are more physical than the other team on the opposing sideline. So do those things that you didn't have in the previous matchup against Missouri, and I think you're talking about a win come Monday.
All right, you already touched on it a lot, talking about special teams and morale, but what do you think the road to victory looks like going into this game?
Yeah, pretty much exactly what I just said. I think, just not to keep harping on it, but it's like I said, they have the things that they've been missing seemingly in this game for so many years now. And at some point, it just feels like if there's ever a year South Carolina is going to get over that hump and finally take back the Mayor's Cup, I think it's this year. They just have the better team, in my opinion. I think Missouri, despite the record, They have just struggled in these big games. Again, it's at home for South Carolina. So I feel really good about the Gamecocks being the team that actually wins this game and comes out on top. Now, for Missouri, the keys are you got to have your guys do their thing. I think you have to have Luther Burden and Theo Weiss have big games. You also need a guy like Drew Pine to step up and play really well. Now, it's easier said than done. Facing the South Carolina defense is going to be a tall task. You're missing your starting center. There's a lot of question marks for Missouri this week. But if they are able to get an early lead and get something cooking, I mean, never say never, but you also need your defense to step up and play ball because South Carolina's been playing really good football on offense lately. If Missouri can find a way to kind of neutralize what the Gamecocks are able to do in the running game, and even with a guy like Sellers, then I feel like maybe Missouri's got a better chance to win this game. But for right now, I'm feeling very confident in South Carolina winning this game. And how do you feel going into this game as well, Karenna?
Well, I also feel confident in South Carolina. I would say, that I felt more confident in Missouri because in years past, I feel like sometimes the morale kind of gets to South Carolina. And even towards the beginning of this season, I was sort of feeling like, wow, what a great team. Like I'm surprised that they're not putting together a game, But I think that these last few weeks have shown us that they really can put together that game. I think if Missouri can stop Rocket Sanders, they're not going to be able to stop the Gamecocks.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I wholeheartedly agree with you. The key, again, rushing is going to be massive in this game. If South Carolina is able to run the football the way they have been, and Rocket Sanders is Rocket Sanders, I just don't see how Missouri is able to win this game. And we'll see what happens, but I think both of us and a lot of people out there are definitely feeling really good about the Gamecocks right now.
All right, thanks for joining us this week. South Carolina plays Missouri at 4:15 on the SEC Network. We're going to have coverage all weekend. And Jack, you'll be keeping us updated.
That's right. Yep, I'll be there, Karenna. We'll have all coverage and updates like you said. And so definitely be sure to stay locked into GamecockCentral.com. You can find all that good stuff there. And while you're at it, if you're watching this video, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. And also, if you're not already, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube page as well as GamecockCentral.com.
Mm-hmm. For Gamecock Central, I'm Karenna Porter.
I'm Jack Veltri.
All right, y'all enjoy college football week 12.